this is the first of our 3 sessions on how we can find Krishna in the world. So we're told by Rupa Goswami to always remember Krishna and never forget him. And we're told to meditate on his name, form, qualities, and pastimes. But when we're moving through our day, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about what we need to get done, and this, that, and the other thing in the world. And all these things in this world is what's interacting with our senses, and thus what's interacting with our mind. And so what we want to do is have all these things that are hitting our senses, our seeing, our hearing, our smelling, our touching, etc., spark remembrance of Krishna. Wouldn't that be nice? Yes? So in Sanskrit this is called an udipana, something that stimulates ecstatic love. So we want everything to act that way. So today we're going to be looking at Krishna's 64 qualities, and don't worry, I'm not going to read this slide. But as we go through this, we're going to go through it rather quickly in our book, and this is a book Lasita and I spent many years writing it, and I think you started, ta-da! She's so happy she hadn't seen the book till yesterday. It's been out for what, 2 or 3 months already? She hadn't seen her own book. So, I think you started in here, in Goloka Dhama, meditating on this.
We worked on it here twice, but we started
Even before, yes. So as we go through this, I'd like you to pick out, don't pay any attention to the people behind the curtain. So I'd like you to try to pick out 1, 2, or 3 of these that you're going to meditate on in the next 24 hours. All right, so this should be a fun class, hopefully. All right, first, this is the qualities that Krishna shares with all living beings, so with us. So we also have all of these qualities as a soul, which is really fun to think about in and of itself. Okay, oh, you have a very nice projector. Thank you for having first-class equipment, even with all the lights on, and it's still, the colors are sharp. So Krishna has great bodily beauty. And this is an easy thing to remember in the world because the world is full of beauty. The birds, the flowers, the sunrise, the sunset. Anytime that we see anything beautiful in the world, we can remember, Krishna is also beautiful. This world is also the body of the Lord. Everyone knows that, yes. The Vishnu, this whole universe is the Lord's body. So whatever beauty we see, Krishna is beautiful. And he has auspicious characteristics on his body. So also the universal body is full of auspiciousness. Actually, every part of it is good and merciful. Sometimes we don't feel that way. Sometimes we feel, oh, this thing has happened to me that is inauspicious. Have you ever had that, and then later on you saw that actually it was a good thing? Yes? In these situations we can remember, oh yes, everything is auspicious and pleasing. So it's a very nice statement by Lord Brahma in chapter 14 of the 10th canto, where he says, this temporary existence of the material world appears to be pleasing and dear because of its having evolved from your body. So anytime we find something pleasing, that is because it's coming from Krishna's body, which is very pleasing. All right, this is an easy thing to meditate on. How can we remember that Krishna is effulgent? What in our life can remind us that Krishna is effulgent? The sun, the moon, the light in your phone. Right? Anytime there's anything bright, it's because Krishna is so bright. Strong. Anytime you see anyone with strength or strong animals, strong wind, strong rain. Anytime we hear of natural disasters, wildfires, earthquakes, tsunamis, Krishna is very strong. Ever youthful. So this is an easy thing to remember in these few days with all these young people running around. Right? Youth is very attractive, isn't it? Everyone's attracted by youth. No one's very attracted by old people like me. Right? This is true. We're all attracted to youth, even youthful animals. Right? Even the beginning buds of flowers in the springtime, when you have the new little light-colored leaves. It's very attractive. Right? Immediately can remind us how Krishna is ever youthful. Wonderful linguist. He can speak all of our languages. So many of you speak 2, 3, 4 languages. Whenever you switch back and forth from your German to your English, from your German to your French, from your French to your Italian. Whenever you hear anybody translating, whenever you hear the animals talking to each other, Krishna can understand all languages. And Krishna always keeps his word of honor. So there are many times when we tell somebody we're going to do something. I'm going to do that. I'm going to have it done by 5 o'clock. And then we actually get it done by 4:30. And how do you feel? I kept my word, right? Don't you feel satisfied like that? I said I would do something, and then I did it. Maybe even I did it better than I promised. That sense of satisfaction reminds us that Krishna is like that. That's the joy that Krishna is feeling, multiplied by so many times. And when we connect with him, we can also feel that satisfaction from Krishna. And he's a pleasing talker. He can pacify even his enemy with sweet words. So we sometimes do this also. You ever have some very difficult person, and somehow you pacify them. You say something and they're pacified. Everyone's had this experience? You all have difficult people in your lives, not just my problem. You have some difficult person, and just somehow you find the right thing to say. Just like, and the person is just happy and goes away, and you're like, yes! That reminds us how Krishna is the most pleasing talker. And we have that, Rupa Goswami gives the example of him speaking nicely to Kaliya, where he says, oh, Kaliya, I wouldn't mind if you stay, but, I have my cows and they need to drink the Yamuna. So is it all right if you leave? But I'm thinking also of Vrikasura, where the Lord comes as that little Shiva brahmachari, and he says, oh, why don't you rest? Oh, son of Shakuni, I'm a friend of your family, and you should take care of yourself. And why are you listening to that Shiva anyway? He's hanging out with the ghosts. You just test your benediction. You just try it. And if it doesn't work, then you can kill Shiva. Just touch your head. He's so expert like that. Okay, very fluent. So he speaks meaningful words with all politeness and good qualities. And Krishna is always listening to everything we say. And whenever we are speaking like that, we can remember Krishna. Highly educated and acts on moral principles. So sometimes we see that, okay, everything's being applied morally in the universe, and other times things appear very chaotic. But we should have deep faith that even when things appear chaotic, that Krishna knows what he's doing, and he is also moral. Right? There are many times people know what they're doing, but they're immoral. They're using their knowledge to manipulate and harm. But again, as we see that everything ultimately works out for the good, we can get this faith. One of the participants in the program yesterday said, how do I know that Krishna is good? Highly intelligent. Don't we find that Krishna knows exactly what to do at the right time? And he learned everything just by hearing it once. Does that ever happen to us? Again, these are qualities that are shared by the jivas. We all have these qualities ultimately in our spiritual form. And sometimes we have this situation. We hear something once and we just get it. Does that happen sometimes? Maybe not often. Sometimes I have to hear something 100 times and I still don't get it. It's like, but sometimes we get something immediately. Krishna is always like that. And a genius. So the example that Rupa Goswami gives of genius is Krishna's playing with words. Am I speaking slowly enough that you can all understand me?
Yes.
Do I need to go more slowly?
No.
No, good. Okay, anybody for whom I'm too fast? So Rupa Goswami gives this example of Krishna making what we call in English a pun. Do you all know what a pun is? It's a kind of joke where you have a play with words. You play with the different meanings because often one word has many different meanings. And you make a play with the meanings of the words. I personally like this kind of humor very much. So Krishna did this with this word vasa. So vasa can mean where you live, how you smell, and your clothes. So Krishna was supposed to come in the evening to see Srimati Radharani, but he didn't. He didn't come until the morning. And when he came, he was missing some of his clothing. Probably he didn't have his chadar or something like that. And she sees him, and she's a little angry. And she says, "Where are your clothes? Vasa, where's your vasa?" And he says, "My vasa, where I live, is in your beautiful eyes." And she said, "I didn't ask you where you live. I asked about your clothes." And he said, "My fragrance, my vasa, is coming from standing next to you." And then she laughed and she wasn't angry anymore. So whenever people make some humorous joke with puns and words, we can remember this quality of Krishna. And very artistic. Krishna is very artistic. He's an expert dancer and singer and also dresser. He dresses very beautifully. He can also dress Srimati Radharani very beautifully. He's expert at writing songs, playing the flute, stringing garlands, making pictures, making magical objects, and playing all kinds of games. So anytime we see anybody who's expert at dancing, at singing, at playing games, right? The kids now, they're playing all these games. Krishna is very expert at this. All these different artistry. We'll be studying in career Dharma, starting tonight, and we'll be studying about the four. We'll be studying about the four fields of work. She's a good friend. You know, when you know you've really got a good friend. So we study about the four fields of work, and one of them is artistry. And Krishna is very expert in all artistry. And clever. So Rupa Goswami describes clever as that Krishna is very good at multitasking. By the way, I'm happy to share this presentation with you. Just write me and send it to you. You can have it. So most of us can do a little bit of multitasking, right? Yes? I can do about 4 things at once. 3 for sure, and generally 4. And yeah, after about that, it gets a little difficult. After 4. You know, then I lose things. Like persons who juggle, you know? So I can definitely juggle 3 or 4 balls, but once, not literally. But once, you know, it gets over that, then I start missing something. But Krishna is taking care of, how many people are there on this planet? 8 billion? Everybody's karma? That's unbelievable. That Krishna is keeping track of 8 billion people's karma and integrating it with each other. And then what to speak of all the plants and the bugs and the germs and the creatures. And this is only one planet, and there's so many planets with so many living beings and so many universes. And Krishna is, that's wow. That's really wow. And then, he's just dancing with his friends. Without any concern about any of this. And he's doing this unbelievable multitasking beyond anything we can imagine. Right? And at the same time, he's just dancing. So Krishna's very clever. Whenever we see somebody who's managing all kinds of things. Right? Like when we just went to a program like this in Sweden. I think there were more. I think there were like 90 people in Sweden. And so Kamala Priya was organizing everything. And I was kept thinking about how Krishna is such a clever multitasker. So Krishna is expert. So he can quickly execute a difficult task. Okay, what do I do with all these billions of gopis who want to dance with me? Okay, I'll just expand. What do I do with all these different weapons? Krishna just knew how to deal with everything. And we see so much expertise in our life that can remind us of Krishna. And grateful. So Krishna is very grateful. All the things we have in our life. You ever find that Krishna just takes care of you? And you're thinking, I don't do very much service for Krishna, and all my service is contaminated, and still Krishna just takes care of me. Actually, the Panchatantra says that the worst person is an ungrateful person. Right? Anybody here regularly practice gratitude? Anybody here regularly practice gratitude? Okay. I've been keeping a gratitude diary every day now for, I think, it tells me how many days. Every once in a while it says, you've been doing this for so many days. I'm over 1,000 days right now. And I really find that it helps me in my life. And to go through life, always what can I be grateful for? And especially I try to do that when I'm annoyed with something. Like this morning when I went to put my washing in, there was water on the floor and I had my socks on. Occupational hazard of being in a Hare Krishna temple. Especially in the temple room, like with a Tulsi, there's always water on the floor, trying to walk around. Anyway, so my socks got wet, and immediately I was like, oh, my socks got wet. Oh, I'm so grateful I have a washing machine. I'm grateful I don't have to wash my clothes by hand. I'm grateful that there's electricity. I'm grateful that I have enough clothes to wash clothes. So somehow, just doing that, actually, just practicing gratitude, there are so many studies that show that it has a huge effect on our mental health and a huge effect on our physical health. There are people, literally, I'm not making this up, who've cured diseases just by practicing gratitude. So whenever we do this, we feel satisfied. Remember that Krishna is so grateful and determined. Krishna is very determined. He fulfills his promises, observe regulated principles. And we can see this determination in how we figure the sun's going to rise. It's going to happen. The seasons are going to change. The sun's going to rise. Expert judge of time and circumstances. So perhaps we've had these kind of situations in our life when Krishna just arranged the right circumstances. Like you were just at the right place at the right time and you met the right person or you did the right thing and it shifted your life. How many of you have had at least one experience like that? So that's Krishna. You're just like, wow, look at that timing. Look at that arrangement. Isn't that amazing? I'll tell you one really funny story. So I was in India and I was staying at the home of some Indians. And when you stay at the home of Indians, one of the things that you never have to worry about is being hungry. Like, just never have to worry that you're going to be hungry. So I was about to go on a plane, and they said, we need to give you some prasadam for your travel. Again, you don't have to worry that they'll forget that. Other people from other countries, they might forget, but not people from India. So they made all this prasadam for my journey, and they gave me a bag like this big, And I said, and how am I going to take all of this prasadam? And then I'm thinking I won't be able to eat it. And then I'll have to throw it away in an airport. And I don't like to throw away prasadam. And I was feeling all this anxiety, Like, what am I going to do? I said, I can't take this. But they were not exactly very open to the idea of my not taking it. They were just like, there was no argument with them whatsoever. So I had to take the whole thing. So I didn't know what to do, and I took it on my first flight, and then I had a stopover, and in the stopover, there was a devotee there, and he looks at me and says, oh, Haribo, Urmila, oh, Haribo, and then he said, do you have any? I said, yes, actually, this is all for you. So Krishna is an expert judge of time, place, and circumstance. Seeing by the authority of the scriptures. So this is interesting because Krishna is the author of the scriptures, and yet he's always referring to the scriptures. So we can remember this anytime we use a GPS, anytime we're using our guidance system, anytime we're using a map, anytime we're following an instruction manual, that Krishna always sees through the scriptures. And pure. So two definitions, that Krishna never becomes impure, and Krishna purifies everything. So what in nature does Srila Prabhupada consistently give as the example of this?
The sun.
The sun. Just something Prabhupada gives over and over and over again, that the sun is shining, if there's stool and urine on the ground, the sun is shining on it, and the sun purifies it. It dries it out, it purifies it, but the sun doesn't become polluted. So this is something to remember. So like right before I came here, I was in Villa Vrindavan, and in Villa Vrindavan, Italy, they have peacocks. And so right at the entrance to the office, some peacock had pooped. And so gradually I saw over a few days, the poop gets dried up and it becomes just like powder from the sun. So in this way, we remember that this is what Krishna is doing. Even though we're so contaminated, if we are close to Krishna, all of our impurities get dried up and become just like powder and blow away. Self-controlled. So we can remember this when we see the mountains. By the way, I'm giving some examples, but in our book we have many, many more. We go much deeper than what I can explain in the class. So just like the mountains, they're being hit by rain, they're being hit by lightning, by snow, by wind, but they don't move from their position. And of course we have the example that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives of a tree. That the tree is not disturbed by anything. And keeps working until he achieves his goal. He doesn't give up. We can remember this whenever we see plants that push their way up through asphalt and concrete. Or the weeds that grow in your garden, no matter what you do to get rid of them. Oh yes, in the same way, Krishna is very determined. He doesn't stop until we're pure devotees. And forbearing. Again, we have the example of the trees that are very tolerant. And also the example that's often given in Shastra is of the earth. Everybody's walking on the earth, drilling into the earth, mining the earth, tunneling into the earth. And still the earth is very tolerant and very forgiving. None of us could go through life without forgiving others and being forgiven by others. Not possible. You cannot work with other humans without offending them and being offended by them. Is that possible? No. It's difficult to go one whole day without disturbing somebody else. Or being disturbed by somebody else. Maybe very minor things, maybe major things. We're constantly forgiving others and being forgiven by others. Constantly. Otherwise we would not be able to function. And if Krishna didn't forgive us, there's no possibility of our attaining Krishna. It would be impossible. I don't know about all of you, but I am offending Krishna every day, multiple times. If he wasn't very forgiving, I just would have no hope at all. So I'm to be grateful, again, this gratitude, to be grateful about how forgiving Krishna is. And he's very brave. We don't always know what Krishna is thinking. If you ever tried to ask him and he doesn't give you an answer. So we can be reminded about this when we see the dark clouds. Will they rain? Will they not rain? In the same way, we don't know what Krishna is going to do. Self-satisfied. We can remember this whenever we see a cactus, or the cactus, whether there's water or not, whether it's very hot in the desert, very cold in the desert. It's always self-satisfied. Equilibrium. that Krishna will punish an enemy. So here we have, if his son is an enemy, here we have Bhaumasura, Krishna's son, who he kills because he was acting sinfully. And Vibhishan, who was apparently an enemy, and Krishna accepted him. Yes. So we see this in the rain and the sun that goes everywhere without discrimination, without attachment. Magnanimous, very charitable. So who here has more clothes than they absolutely need? Who here has more food available than they can eat? Krishna's very charitable, isn't he? Do we need flowers? Does anyone need flowers? Flowers could be boring, right? They could be just without any smell, without any color, and the plants could still get pollinated. Krishna's so charitable. He's given us so much. 40 kinds of apples. Do we need 40 kinds of apples? Krishna's so charitable. Religious. We can be reminded of this in the movements of the planets that always follow the religious rules, they always follow the Vidi. Very heroic. So there's so many devotees in our Krishna consciousness movement who are very heroic in spreading Krishna consciousness. And of course, Srila Prabhupada, what a great hero. To come at 70 years old on a cargo ship with some books, very poorly printed books, if you see the original. Even the type was not straight. Such a hero to come. No way. That Krishna is compassionate. So this is a story that there were, this king, Magadendra, had kidnapped and imprisoned all these kings, and Krishna released them. As we see so much compassion within human society, and even within animal society. We see sometimes animals, they will help human beings. You've heard stories like this, like some dolphins, they save a swimmer, or some animal helps an animal of another species. Respectful. So there's so much respect in the universal body. The ocean that respects the shore, right? The sun that sets and respects the sphere of the moon, the bees and ants that obey their queen, the wild animals in a herd that follow the leader of their herd, the leader of their pack. Very gentle. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the example in nature of a fruit tree that's full of so many fruits, full of so many good qualities, but still it's bending down in humility. And very liberal. So we can see this quality in gemstones that, like Krishna, even if he's been offended, he's kind. So the gemstones, they're mined from the earth, and they're cut and they're polished. And still they give their beauty to everyone. And Krishna is very shy. When we look at the world, it's like an artist who didn't sign his painting. How can you see this guy? He's very shy. And protecting the surrendered souls. And it's very popular stories. This is about Vibhishan, these pictures. So there's many popular stories. People love stories of redemption. Some sinful or degraded person who gets their life together and is actually protected once they have surrendered. And these stories can remind us of Krishna's love. Krishna is very happy. There's so much joy in nature, the dancing of the bees, the little calves after they drink milk and they start jumping around, the playfulness of the young people. That Krishna is very happy. Well-wisher of his devotees. I hope we all have at least one well-wisher in our life. That can remind us of how Krishna is the well-wisher of his devotees. Controlled by love. We see this everywhere. Parents who are controlled by the love of their children, husbands and wives controlled by the love of each other. A person controlled by the love of their dog, their cat. The dog that's controlled by the love of their master. All auspicious. Whenever we see things that look bad, they turn for the good. How the death of a tree nourishes the other plants. How the presence of predator animals keeps everything in balance. Most powerful. So here we have Ram, Nrsimha, Varaha, Padasana. always putting his enemies into calamities. Whenever we see the atheistic, demoniac, exploitive philosophies and persons destroyed in the world, we can remember this. All famous. And here Rupa Goswami gives the example in nature of the moon. So this is actually a picture of Balaram, whose dress became white when he heard the chanting of Krishna's name. Unfortunately, I don't have the Yamuna also turning white in this picture. But the fame of the moon that turns everything white. And very popular. So there's many popular things in nature. The sun is popular on a cold day. The water is popular on a hot day. Fire is popular on a cold day. And of course, there's so many popular people in the world who can remind us of this quality. Partial to his devotees. So I'm sure there are people for whom we are partial. There are people that we particularly care about. And so Krishna's like this with his devotees. Very attracted to all women, just like a magnet. Prahlad Maharaj says this. He says that Krishna is like a magnet, just attracting him as an iron filing. Whenever we use magnets, we can remember this quality of Krishna. All worshipable. Every time we see churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, all opulent. All the 6 opulences, we'll be talking about this tonight in Career Dharma, as far as how we can feel rich in our own work. But we can see Krishna's beauty in the beautiful sunrise, his strength in the great winds, his wealth in the rivers, right? His fame like the sky that is everywhere, his knowledge like air that pervades everything, and his renunciation like the ocean is unaffected by the rivers and the rain. This is something I really like and a very easy thing to remember, that Krishna is all honorable, and Rupa Goswami gives this example. So he says that the demigods wanted to see Krishna, and they're in the waiting room. And so Krishna's servant comes out and says, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, I'm sorry, Krishna's really busy. You have to wait a little longer. Varuna, very sorry. Krishna's not going to see you at all today. Come back another time. Indra, would you be quiet? Your prayers are too loud. They're bothering you. So honorable people can make others wait. Do we ever have to wait? You call some company and then we are very busy. Somebody will be with you. Please hold on. When we were traveling, so we were taking a train, and I like to get the schedule of the stops. So at the train station, we went to the office to get the schedule, and you had to take a number. You know those things where you take a number? But they had different categories of numbers. Like if you wanted to buy a ticket, you got one category of number you wanted. And they had 8 booths, but they weren't taking many people with our category of numbers. You know, they were taking the other categories. I guess they were interested in selling tickets and giving information, right? So we're waiting and we're waiting. And meanwhile, you know, the train's going to come. And so one of the devotees I was with who had seen this, he said, Krishna is all honorable. So whenever we are waiting, we can remember that Krishna can make anybody wait, even Lord Shiva. Supreme controller. Whenever we feel helpless. Do you ever feel helpless? Krishna's in control, I'm not in control. I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. We cannot refuse whatever conditions Krishna gives us. So those are all the qualities Krishna has that are shared with us. So we also, all these qualities we just mentioned that Krishna has, we, the Jiva, also have these qualities. Now we're going to look at the qualities that are shared with Lord Vishnu and with Lord Shiva. And to some extent with living entities also, because this one changeless, that Krishna is not affected when he's in the material world, Rupa Goswami gives this example that those who are Krishna conscious are also not affected. So I was talking with 2 people yesterday about this, how to be unaffected. How to be unaffected. So generally what conditioned souls do in this world when things affect us, which happens all the time. Right? We don't go through a day, and probably not an hour, without being emotionally affected by something. And these emotions are, to a large extent, troublesome. Am I right? Yes. Even what we call the positive emotions. Like if you go around jumping in joy, people will be like, are you okay? Why are you so happy? Indradyumna Swami tells this story. He was waiting in the line for security, and one other person in the line said, excuse me, but if you look that happy, the security people are going to pull you out. So, even the so-called positive emotions, if we display them too much, people are a little like, What to speak of the negative emotions? We were talking yesterday how we all learn by the time we're like 5 or 6 years old that we better control how we exhibit our negative emotions. So then what do we generally do? Well, we try to repress them. I just won't show. I just won't show. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm just fine. And we develop all these techniques of repressing our emotions. Or we may escape our emotions. That's very popular, and I think today has become very, very popular. All kinds of intoxicants or entertainment where you just try to forget that you have different emotions. And of course, neither of those things work all the time. So every once in a while, our emotions kind of explode. Right? Or if we're successful at repressing them, then they explode in various diseases, mental and physical diseases. All human society has outlets for expressing our pent-up, repressed emotions. What are some situations in human society where you're really encouraged to express very strong emotions? Theater. Sports. Why do people play sports and watch sports? Because they can finally be angry and fearful and exuberant. What else?
Carnival.
Huh?
Carnival.
A carnival, yes. Music, concerts, yes.
Art.
With art, with theater, or expressing in art, yes. Weddings, funerals, political rallies. Don't think that people really care who wins the election. Seriously. They're just going there to have some venting for their emotions.
Also in some careers, like people appreciate if you're a high-powered lawyer, for instance, that you can really fight.
That you can really fight, yes. Also, there are certain cultures where you're allowed to express your emotions when you're intoxicated. There are certain cultures that people are expected to be extremely, but then they drink a lot. And when you're drinking, then you're allowed to express emotions. But this is not the way, my dear friends. This is not the way. The way that the devotees actually exhibit this changelessness is by being free from attachment and aversion. And I find it very interesting that right now in the world, Prabhupada talks about techniques of spiritual life. This technique of spiritual life is becoming extremely popular. This concept, and unfortunately, the popularity is stemming from Buddhist practices. But where one steps back and says, I am the observer, and I am observing the thoughts and feelings and desires that are moving through my body and mind, and I allow them to move through my body and mind. Just like one would walk down the street and some very noisy vehicle passes you, and you just let it pass. And you're just the observer that some noisy vehicle is passing by you. And you don't need to express anything, you don't need to repress anything, you don't need to escape anything. You're just a detached observer. And as I say, it's become very popular. I mean, there are authors that are becoming millionaires by writing books and teaching about how to get this detachment, this free from attachment and aversion. Now, the sad thing about what's being taught in the world, because it's very much based on Buddhist ideas, is that they don't have anything positive. And it's very difficult for the living entity to just simply be the observer. Because although the experience of happiness and peace that comes from just being the observer is a gazillion times more than whatever happiness we get by experiencing our material emotions. The happiness of spiritual emotions is a gazillion times more than the peace and the happiness one gets just by being the observer. So the way that the devotees of the Lord experience this changelessness is they go beyond the platform of neutrality to experience deep emotions in relationship to Krishna. But both of these things should go on. Actually, Rupa Goswami lists as one of the 10 items of Vaidhi Bhakti, that one of the 10 do not be overcome by lamentation and joy in the world. And again, this does not mean repression, but it means being unaffected by taking the position of the observer. That all of the different thoughts, feelings, and desires on the material level that go through me, they are not me. And then taking that additional step to be engaged in the spiritual emotions. So there is a way to practice this, and this way, there's many ways, but what I'll tell you right now is an advanced practice. It's a very simple practice is just, this is a big noisy truck driving by on the highway. It's not me, it has nothing to do with me. Let me absorb myself in the transcendence. That's basic. An advanced practice, which is only applicable if you really know the scriptures. So if you really study, Krishna Goloka, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, then this will work for you. Prabhupada talks about doing this. I didn't make it up. And it's very, very powerful. So you take what emotion you're experiencing, and you find some equivalent emotion in the accounts of Krishna and the devotees. Now, when I teach people this, sometimes they pick a demon. Please don't pick a demon. Please don't pick a demon. Please don't pick a demon. Pick a devotee or Krishna. So I give you some simple examples. So there was one devotee, he and his wife had been accused of doing things that they did not do, and they were told that they could not visit the temple. They couldn't visit the temple, they couldn't teach any online classes, they couldn't have any programs in their home, and they were going through ISKCON Resolve to get this settled, but the whole thing took probably almost 2 years before it actually got settled. So during that time, they consulted with me several times, and I remember one time speaking to them, and the husband was going on and on about how much distress he felt. We were falsely accused, we were discriminated against, and why did they do this? And I said, Prabhu, can you think of anyone in Shastra who was experiencing this? And he said, well, the Pandavas. He said the Pandavas were unfairly cheated out of their kingdom and exiled. I said, well, is there one of the Pandavas you'd like to meditate on? And he said, Nakula. I said, okay. Can you talk to me about how Nakula was feeling when he was in exile in the forest and when he was in his year of anonymity? And this devotee started talking about Nakula, how Nakula must have been feeling, how he must have been feeling about Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, how he must have been feeling about Yudhisthira, and so on and so forth. And after 5 minutes of this, he said, I feel wonderful. He said, I've completely forgotten all of my distress. So I give you one other example. So there was one devotee I know that her husband had to be traveling for an extended length of time. So she was separated from him, and she was talking to me about how much grief she was feeling and how much anxiety and how much worry and how lonely she was. So we thought about, I said, who is there in Shastra that was in a similar situation? Can you think of somebody in Shastra? Kunti, of course, her husband died, so it's similar, but a little different. Sachi, but then again, her husband he actually died. Similar. You could pick that. So she picked Rohini. Do you ever think about that? Anybody ever think about that? I ended up writing, I'm not going to pull it up now, but I ended up writing a poem with my friend about Rohini. And how, Rohini had to go to Vrindavan and give birth to her child in Vrindavan away from her husband Vasudeva. And then she had to raise her child alone without her husband. I mean, Balaram's God. So that's pretty nice. And she has her friend Yasoda, and she has her friend's husband Nanda Maharaj, and a lot of Vasudeva's other co-wives were also in Vrindavan. But still, she's missing her husband. When you have a child with somebody, you want to share with them. Oh, look at that, he rolled over. He said a word. He had his first rains. And how did she feel? How did she feel? That to protect her son, she had to keep a distance from her husband. I'm sure she sent him messages. Maybe sometimes she sneaked into Mathura and visited him. I don't know. But how did she feel? And as we were meditating on how she felt, then this devotee, all of her grief and anxiety about being separated from her husband in this world, also dissipated. Should I tell you one more story? This is a heavy story that I'm going to tell you. So we were sitting in a temple, I won't say where, and I was sitting next to a friend of mine who had gone through a lot of sexual trauma in her life. So she had been molested as a child by a family member, and as a teenager she had been raped. She'd also been beaten. She'd really been through a lot. And we were sitting in a class, and the devotee sitting on the Vyasa-san made some statements about how if women are raped or beaten, then they must deserve it. They must have asked for it. And she was sitting next to me, and she just, So afterwards we were talking, and we were trying to, we also dealt with this in external ways, and talked to the authorities, and talked to this person, and that kind of thing. But as far as how she was feeling. So I asked her, can you find something in scripture? Because this was something spoken by a devotee in a temple. And finally she went to Govardhan Lila. How Indra is a devotee. But although Indra is a devotee, he was trying to kill everyone in Vrindavan. And she started meditating on how Mother Yasoda felt. How Mother Yasoda wanted to protect Krishna from Indra, that when Krishna's holding Govardhan Hill, that Mother Yasoda is so much worried about Krishna being attacked by his Indra, who's also a devotee. And we started really talking about the pastime and meditating on the pastime and going deeper and deeper and deeper into how Mother Yasoda was feeling, watching Krishna, holding up the hill, and how she wanted to protect Krishna. And then again, my friend, she had been just completely in a traumatized state. She became not only peaceful, we both became extremely joyful. And I remember we were walking from there to Prasadam, and we looked at each other and said, we're not these bodies. We have nothing to do with this world. So it was an extraordinary experience. So this is how the devotees remain changeless. That we remain changeless, not just by following the same technique used by the Mayavadis and the Buddhists. They also use that stepping back technique. But also that we absorbed ourselves in the transcendence. So Krishna knows everything. So many things in our modern society can remind us of this quality of Krishna. Every time we do a search on the internet, the great all-knowing Google. Every time we worry about our phones listening to us. But of course, no government and no search engine actually knows everything. But Krishna knows everything. Ever fresh. How every time we read the scriptures, every time we chant in a kirtan, it's always fresh and new. We can be reminded of this in nature, right? A nice fresh breeze on a hot day. The winter sun that's fresh and new in the winter. Eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Our own search to be eternal, to be full of knowledge, and to always be happy. Why are we looking for these things in this world? Only because they exist in Krishna. And all mystic perfections. There's so many mystic perfections. Anytime we see anybody doing any magic, we can remember, Krishna actually has mystic perfections. Qualities Krishna has, he only shares with Narayana. Inconceivable potencies. Prabhupada talks about how our hair growing is an inconceivable potency. How the cows can make milk out of grass is an inconceivable potency. How a little speck of dust inside an oyster can become a pearl is an inconceivable potency. Krishna's body generating millions of universes. We can remember this when we see children blowing bubbles. Or if there's a tree that has those seeds, that spread out in the wind and go everywhere. When some company opens a shop in 1,000 different cities with their franchises. The source of all incarnations. So when anyone is a hero, they can remind us of Ram. When anyone gives quiet support, they can remind us of Kurma. Anyone who roots out corruption can remind us of Parasuram. Anyone who protects children can remind us of the Singadev. Giving salvation to the enemies that he kills. If ever we've restored a relationship with somebody that's really betrayed or offended us, somehow we've been able to restore that and give them freedom, we can remember this. Attracting liberated souls. Persons who are completely free, they have no sense of need, they have no sense of want, they have no desires, but still they're attracted to Krishna. There's so many things that we do just out of freedom, isn't it? Don't we do like hobbies just because we want to? We're not making money off of it. Nobody's asked us to do it. We may not even share it with anyone. We just do it because we want to. In the same way goes this. At the platform of total freedom, those who are attracted to Krishna. And Krishna's super excellence, all of his pastimes. So all of the different rasas that exist with Krishna exist in this world, and things in this world can remind us of Krishna's pastimes. Right? Somebody being a chauffeur in a car reminds us of Garuda carrying Krishna. The children playing remind us of Krishna playing with the other cowherd boys. Someone serving prasadam reminds us of Krishna's servants. Loving parents remind us of Yasoda and Nanda. Seeing some young couple in love reminds us of Krishna's romantic pastimes. And Krishna is surrounded by loving devotees. Prabhupada often talks about how the president is surrounded by his entourage. Some movie stars surrounded by their entourage. Whenever we see anyone surrounded by loving, adoring fans, we remember Krishna. Krishna's attractive flute. So music is so attractive. So just recently there was a news headline that there was a musician in America, a very famous songwriter, musician, and she had some big concert in America. And everybody there was, I don't know if it was a stadium or a concert hall, I don't know. They were all dancing, jumping up and down, dancing and clapping and singing. And the local geologists registered a slight earthquake. It's a true story, it just happened like a week or two ago. How much people are affected by music. Some ordinary singer on the earth. How attractive is Krishna's flute. And finally, Krishna's unrivaled beauty. So how can we remember anything in this world? How can anything in this world remind us of Krishna's unrivaled beauty? But there's so many beauty contests, right? Where everyone's trying to be the top. Miss Universe or Mr. Universe. So they're all trying to be the unrivaled beauty, but only Krishna is the unrivaled beauty. All right, I'd like to ask if anybody would like to share one thing from here that they're going to meditate on in the next 24 hours. Yes?
Krishna's gratitude.
Krishna's gratitude, okay. Somebody else? Yes?
Krishna is pure,
Krishna's pure, yes. Okay, someone else.
all forgiving.
All forgiving, okay. Somebody else? Yes?
Strong.
Strong. All right, somebody else.
Krishna's compassionate.
Compassionate. All right, somebody else.
All auspicious.
All auspicious. Okay.
Wonderful linguist.
Wonderful linguist. That's easy to remember here today with all the different languages going on. Yes, somebody else.
Changeless.
Changeless. Anybody else? Artistic.
Steadfast.
Steadfast. Very good. So tomorrow we're going to do another. We have two more. One is the I am verses that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita, and the other is the descriptions of the universal form from the Bhagavatam, from the 2nd canto and from the 8th canto. So if you enjoy this and you'd like to go deeper, we have a few copies of our book here. This book became a bestseller on Amazon in the meditation and Eastern philosophy category.
Oh.